Good evening and welcome to the January 22nd, 2019 meeting of the Merrimack School Board. If you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number 2 is public participation. Since there are no members of the public present, we will close public participation. And we will go on to item number 3, which is the administration's response relative to the board's request to consider adding back items from the cut list to 2019-2020 budget. So I will turn it over to Marge and Matt.
Thank you. I'm going to begin and then ask Matt if he wishes to add anything to what I'm saying. So you asked us to go back and to take the cut list and to go through and prioritize it, and we have done that. The leadership team has processed this page, and so what you were in receipt of is the outcome from that meeting. I want to say that we began the exercise by taking the 2 positions that we cut, that is a student wellness coordinator position and a benefits coordinator position. We moved that off the table, as we also did the Honeywell engineering study, because we heard the board mention that as not being something that you wanted to consider. So there are actual 9 items for your consideration. And the first item that we thought should be brought back, if possible, was 2 split air conditioning units. Those are units that the Director of Student Services, John Fabrizio, originally had in his budget. They would be placed at Reed's Ferry School for specific students that need proper climate. The second we thought was important to put before you were the whiteboards. Nancy Rose is the overseer of this effort. $15,000 would allow her to purchase 20 to 25 boards. The price of each is based on the length of the whiteboard and the installation fee. It's different in different buildings. The building that has the greatest need at this time for whiteboards is the high school, followed by Thornton's Ferry, followed by the upper elementary. The third item is to crack fill the playground areas at Reed's Ferry. This would be for both playgrounds, the north and the south playground. The Director of Maintenance would say that filling the cracks would really help the dips and the dives. That is, that water seeps in, as you know, under the pavement, and then it starts to heave up. And so even though we eventually will probably need to repave these, in the interim, that would be exceedingly helpful. So you notice that the first 3 items all have to do with children's needs, inside and outside of the building. The next item you'll see that there are 2 numbered 4, and that's because we felt strongly that if we're going to go into the office window replacements, both buildings are exactly the same. They're mirror images of each other, and these are the only 2 year-round office areas that aren't properly ventilated, if you will. So in other words, if you said we're concerned about equity across the board, these 2 areas in the office areas are the ones that really need help. And so what would it allow is the replacement of 5 windows. It would be in the principal's office, assistant principal's office, 2 in the main office, and the nurse's area. Those are all the areas that are utilized in the summer, and if we have summer school or whatever, these people are there. And so we just feel if you're going to go into that area, we would like to have them replaced in both buildings. Then we go into the wood post replacement at Reed's Ferry School. If you wanted to see that wood post, if you came down Lyons Road, right before the fencing area, you would see the wood posts. They have kind of jagged tops. They have been there for a long period of time, and it's just time to replace it. Then you'll see 2 sets of aluminum tables. one for the upper elementary school, one set for the upper elementary, and one for Merrimack High School. These were put forward by the Director of Maintenance himself because we have more events going on at these buildings, like the deliberative session, like voting, and these are lighter weight tables for the custodians to be able to move about. And so just for them and for ease, he put these forward. We think it's important, but not as high a priority as some of the other things. And lastly is crack filling the student parking lots. This is the parking lots that go down O'Gara Drive. And again, it just further protects the payment there, and it would extend its life, ultimately to be repaved at some point in time. But this was just to fill in particular areas. But if you, again, and looking at the whole of the 8 possibilities, we feel that's the last in the order. So I would turn to Matt and just say, Matt, is there anything you would add to any of what I said before the board asked questions?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is these 8 individual items, if my math is correct, and I just did it on a spreadsheet here, totals $244,075. So just for your convenience, and please somebody check it, because that would be helpful. Thanks.
It's close to what I had in my head by a couple, so. Are there any questions of what was presented? I had thoughts on how we could process this information, and I think where we left off at our last meeting was that we were looking at option A or option B. I think the first thing we want to do is go with an option for the cuts that will get us below default. And with that, how much of the cuts do we want to restore so that we're taking care of what you call the short-term items? So I think, looking at that, do we have what I'll call an overriding opinion of option A and B, and then I think it would tell us where we are in relation to our default budget. So I personally, since, I guess I'll open it, my preference would be option B for reasons that I think when you're talking about the items in option A, there's a lot of student experience impact, where with option B, you're looking at roofing, which we've gotten some, I wouldn't call it guarantee, but some reassurances that we're not in harm's way by doing that move. And I think that gives us a lot more to work with cut restoration that will also impact the student experience. So that's where my head is at with it. Just so you know, and of course it's, we as a board will decide as a collective what's best, but that's where my thoughts were with this, and that way we're, doing something that's, I think, a lot more impactful to the student. So my 2 cents, but let me open it up to you guys. Do you have an overriding sense of what set of cuts you would prefer the board take before we start getting to restoration? So Brandy and I think Andy.
I agree with you. I just in seeing some of the items listed in option A, I'd like to see those really stay, to be honest. So I think I agree with you that I'm comfortable with allowing, I think our roof structure is where it is. I'm confident that we will not see significant damage at this time. So pushing that for a year, I think, is a good idea. So I would agree that we go with option B.
Andy?
So I'm going to be the dissenting opinion, and I'll give you the reason why, and you can decide whether I'm full of it or not. My preference in looking at this and after doing a bunch of analysis is option A. And the reason is, and I know Shannon, you mentioned last time about trying to level out the tax impact to make sure that, we did things that didn't have big spikes or big reductions or things like that. If you take I know folks, this is available on the website, but one of the things that I did was take the spreadsheet that was available that included the bonded debt, so you could look at the total expenditure over the years. And just so folks at home understand, in the budget year that we're in now, we pay our last year of the Honeywell energy retrofit, which is $467,000. At the end of, and then the following budget year, which is 2021, we make the last payment on the Merrimack High School additions, which is $303,000. And then after that, we have 3 more years for the middle school construction. And then at the end of that, then all the bonded debt goes away. So we lose $467 next year. We'll lose another $303,000 after the following year, and then it's like 800 and some thousand that over 3 years, and then it goes away. So if you look at that, and then you look at the overall projects, what's being proposed does level it out in terms of moving the roofing, looking at the reduction. It does make the overall bonded debt and the capital improvement be a little more flat year over year. However, some of the items that are on this bonded debt and schedule are things that we have chosen as a board to move into warrant articles. So a lot of what gets done and what shows up in here is not only dependent on the operating budget and the default that we've been discussing here in this item, but also whether the voters choose things like, the big items there's between 275 and 320,000 worth of paving for the next 3 years, which are likely warrant articles. There's we've heard that the parents are coming with a petition warrant article for the turf field, which may or may not happen for this year, depending on the voters. The other thing, too, is if we then, so there's things that we have control over as a board and things that we don't, right? And we've done that consciously, right? If we choose to move the 655,000, actually it's 595,000, I believe, because remember, one of the things that Matt told us last week is we have over $60,000 bid price that's lower. Or is that 655 include the reduction? Or is that before the reduction?
You're talking about option A?
No, he's talking here.
Well, if you,
55 is gross cost that we have in the budget.
Matt, your mic's up.
Yeah, the 655 doesn't take into account the reduction of 60,385. So it's the whole figure
Okay.
coming out.
so in your option A, you show removal of part of the roof of 190,000 because we won't do a section, but then a removal of the 60,000, which means that if we did pay for the remaining 2 sections, it would be 655 minus 190 minus 60,000.
Yeah, correct.
Right. So if we take all of that, and we don't know if there would be a lower bid next year, we move the 655 completely into 2021 budget, operating budget. That brings the roofing estimate to just about $1.8 million for all the roofing if you combine it all together. Now, my concern I have is from an operating budget perspective, with something that large, trying to find an operating budget next year that goes below default will be inherently more difficult to do. And we don't know whether we'll get the reduced cost and things like that. So if you look pragmatically at and you assume that all these things are things that we need, in my mind, option A gives us, even though it does remove some other things and it gets us closer to default, it does level out the things that we do have control over. So there's the logic that that I've heard presented is the overall, and I've looked at it more from the what we have control that we're proposing as part of the operating. So that's why I support option A.
Are there any other thoughts on A versus B? So Cinda.
I'm also in support of option B for the reasons that have been mentioned. I do appreciate Andy's feedback and analysis that he's done. I would say that from my perspective, it's my hope that given the position the district will be in as this bonded debt rolls off completely, will allow for us to be able to take care of these other items. So I would be in favor next year if there's one that we can push out a year, similar to what we're doing this year, that we do that. But I'm still in favor of being able to look at option B for this year, and then, as Shannon stated, bring in some of these items that are going to impact our students the most.
Naomi?
Andy and/or Matt, could you talk a little bit more about the issue that you brought up about the default budget, how it would or wouldn't be? I understand what you're saying, but I want to make sure I have the numbers right.
So my only point is if we do no roofing at all this year, it'll be the first year in a long time we haven't done real roofing. And next year we come up to 1.8 million. I don't know, I mean, I know, Matt, you use calculations on default budget in terms of what we did the previous year and things that are recurring items as we go through. So I'm just curious and to get to your question, what the recurring impact of not doing any roofing at all and then picking up a large topic for a year.
Well, you're going to be below your default by the amount of that roof in its entirety. So if you put a roof back in to the operating budget, depending upon what else happens, you may have difficulty getting under the default budget with your general operating budget. So that's the big advantage to carrying some piece of roof for this year. With option A, you're $333 under default. With option B, without anything added in from the list, you're $344,000. So you kind of lose that amount to catch up to default.
But what about
next year?
Yeah, okay.
Next
Great.
year, yeah.
Okay.
Cinda?
Are there advantages in going out to bid for a larger scope of roofing next year? So does it make it more competitive, or do you think from a pricing perspective that could play in our advantage?
Well, it would be, I believe it would be two different locations, but it would definitely, seeing that I spoke briefly about broadening the specification, because now we're sole sourcing Garland, which you can do. I mean, we do that with student information systems. We don't put our student information system Power School out to bid every year. That wouldn't be, proper to change that all over time. So we've gotten very pleased with Garland over the years, but we can write the spec differently to not exclude other products. So perhaps taking that approach, widening the scope, would generate more interest. I don't know. That's kind of my best thinking right now. But
Keeping in mind the warranty being consistent, correct?
yes,
I think
we
discussed that
would
as
we
well.
would maintain the 40-year warranty that we're getting now, unless the board says otherwise. It may be a change in strategy for you for next year. That's all I'm saying. You may want to consider putting it up as a warrant article.
Naomi?
This is a bit of a tricky one for me because I have my own personal biases towards making sure that infrastructure always gets taken care of. But to be honest, I'm leaning towards B. And the reason is the list of student-related items that would be postponed in order to deal with a roof that is probably capable of lasting a while yet has grown to be pretty impressive between the whiteboards and the furniture and the other pieces. It seems that we'd be giving up quite a bit that is of immediate use to the students in order to take that advantage.
So, are there any other questions or comments on the options? So, at this point, I will entertain a motion to, and Matt, I'm just going to clarify, if you wouldn't mind, that it's option B would not be a savings of $755,805, but would be more than that or less? Less. So I'm sorry, so it's the $695,420. I started to question my math, which is the $60,385 where the bid came in lower, or should we just use that $755 number?
You're not doing any.
If you're going to take option
Yeah.
B, the amount that would go away from the budget, you'd forget about option A in its entirety, and then the number. No, I'm sorry.
Microphone.
It's the
It's
new-
easier to
the new-
figure out whether your microphone's on in the other room, so I will give it that.
Yeah, well, the
So
new
it's-
venue, because this is such a
Yeah.
you know
It doesn't have the
close
same
setting.
reverberation, yeah.
Correct.
Sorry about that.
I apologize. So if you consider option B, the number is $755,805.
Okay.
That's the cut you would be making from the bottom line right now.
Okay, just wanted to make sure because we
Yes.
had that bid situation.
Yep, that's all intertwined in it.
Andy?
And just to make sure I understand, the reasoning is because if we do any roof this year, we get it cheaper. But if we do no roof this year, then there's no savings that you can take off of a budgeted item, right?
Off the budgeted item, correct.
Correct. So that's where you save the whole 655 if you do nothing based on the budget. If you do option one, instead of the 190, or instead of the 400 and whatever it is, it's minus 60,000,
Okay.
less than that. That's the reason you see the savings in A but not in B.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. So, at this point then, I would entertain a motion to select an option presented to us for cuts to go before a vote. Cinda?
I'd like to make a motion to select option B cuts for the 2019-2020 school district operating budget.
In the amount of $755,805.
That's right.
Okay, is there a second? Seconded by Brandy. Speak to the motion. Any comments or questions to the motion? Andy?
So just to be clear, what we're voting on is which option we're choosing.
Right.
And then if when we decide on what the option we're choosing, any adjustments to that based on like the cut list is a separate.
Correct. So with that, we will put the motion to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, 1. Andy. And the motion carries 410. So a good exercise and discussion. So thank you. Now let's get on to the budget cuts that were presented to us. So Matt, if you could indulge me again, the amount for cuts, if we take all 8 options, add up to what's the total?
244,075.
Okay, thank you. So options 1 through 8 presented us $244,000 and $244,075, which would bring us to 345. I think I'm doing this right. So is it 431,345 over default or under default? I'm getting it right.
If you add everything back in,
You're adding
It's
244, so it's
100,479.
100,479. Yep.
100,000. So by adding all those items back in
Right.
that he just said, instead of being 344 under
Default will be
you're
100,000.
100,479 under
Yep.
default.
Okay. So with that, we'll start vetting it. So Andy, I think your hand was up first.
So here's my view. If we're going to make the option B cut so there's more money taken off the bottom line, I don't want to take all of these because administration put these in the cut list to start with for a reason, because they felt they were less important. We're already, if in option A, we were going to remove a lot of furniture replacement, the sink bases, which are now back in the budget. So if I look at what is in the cut list that you were proposing to put back, my belief, my personal belief is that the first 3 items are what I would support putting back in the amount of, what is that? 45, 55, 60, 61,700, I believe, the top 3, because those are the 3 that directly affect students.
62.7.
So, sorry.
That's right, 62.7.
$62,700.
Okay.
Because that's the 2 split air conditionings for the student services, the whiteboards to replace them largely at the high school, and the crack fill in the playground areas. All the ones below, which while they're obviously needed in my mind, if we're going to make a cut and put it below default, let's do it and make it a little more meaningful than what the proposal is. So that's my input.
Okay. Brandy.
I would agree but I would like to also include the window replacement for the purpose being that they're used year round. And having seen them, I can understand why that would be a good investment to make at this time. So I would like to include items 1 through 4.
And so that'd be, and I'm doing some math again. 216,700. Okay, so 1 through 4 gets us to 216,700, which taking the 354 minus 216,700 gets us to 54,76. 16. You're killing me because I know you have a calculator on you. Yes, Cinda.
So I agree with Andy and then Brandy, but when I look at what's left, we're looking at like $10,000. So I would say I think administration has already just taken things off the table. We've taken off the positions. That's those positions right there were just under 176,000. We took off the 200,000 for the Honeywell engineering study. So I would like to take those remaining items, and I also view the Crackville to student parking lots as a student-related item. And also the aluminum tables I view as a staff-related item, if it's hurts their back and things like that, if they're having to move heavy equipment often. So I would say throw in the extra 10,000 and let's do 1 through 8, and take administration's advice by removing the student welfare coordinator, the benefits coordinator, and the Honeywell engineering study, and add these items back so we have them taken care of when we look at next year's operating budget.
Naomi?
Your last point was the one I was about to go towards, and that is, well, it's laudable to save as much as possible right now. I think these are all items that will need to be done at some point. And so the question is, at what point do we fit them in best?
Right.
Whether we have the space now or if we'll have to add them on top of what we missed this year.
Right.
next
Just
time
as
around.
Andy's point earlier, and that's exactly what I was thinking too, is we'd be putting these things in next year's operating budget. Well, then let's take what we were going to defer and keep it there. So I'm in the same mindset as Cinda with that. So bringing the 244,075, we're still $100,479 under default. The student experience is maximized. I think those are the things that we were making sure, when we're looking at cuts and restorations, that when we discussed it last time, we were talking about what can we bring back to make sure that we can, do the best for our students and still be under default. And I think, and staff, yeah, of course, thank you. I was thinking about them. I was not vocalizing, but they of course appreciate it as well. So having that $100,000 under default, I think definitely shows where we need to be as a district. I think that when you have defaults less than your operating budget, as a better opportunity to pass, and I think that the expenditures in this budget were very purposeful, and anything we can do to make sure that that mission is being completed is one of the greatest responsibilities we have. So, Cinda.
I just wanted to do a quick calculation, though, of what was on the cut list and then what we're adding back in. So the grand total for the cut list was $627.67, and we were gonna potentially, if someone makes a motion, add back in $244.
$1,075.
Okay. So that would be, so that's still less than 50% of the cut list that we would be adding back in.
Correct. Andy?
So I know how this is going to go, but I just have to put it out there. Based on the motion I believe is going to be made and what's going to be voted on 4-1, is to add those 8 items back. Actually, there's 9 items actually, but they're 2 number 4s, which will make the operating budget, proposed operating budget, $100,479 less than default. My position was to add only the top 3 back in, which, for the record, just to make me feel better, would mean that our operating budget would be $281,854 below default, which is, I think, I feel more comfortable with. So if we vote separately just on these items, that's sort of the position I'm going to take.
Okay. Naomi?
Andy, could you talk a little bit more about where you see the items that are below your point on the list falling in the future?
Well, somebody made a comment earlier on that they wanted to see items from the cut list put back that directly impacted students. And when Marge was doing her presentation, she talked about the top 3 directly affecting students. Items 4 was for staff, and 5, 6, and 7 were for staff and upkeep. One could debate whether item 8 with the parking lot for the high school students needed it or not, but it's only $16,000, so I could be tempted to move that up. But I chose the ones that affected students, and that's how I drew the line. Do we need to do the other ones over time? Absolutely, but as far as this year, for what we're trying to accomplish, that's how I made my decision. So.
And with number 8, I look at students plus community. I think that high school gets used for a lot more than students, but absolutely students and staff. But that definitely has resonating throughout the community impacts. Every July 4th, it's the busiest place in town. So, among other dates. But so on that note, I see where you're at. You know, I tend to agree with Cinda's position. We're still under default. The window replacement's really the one that, if I were to take one out, that's the one I would take out, because the other stuff being small, and I would take both of them out, of course, because for equity purposes, I wouldn't do one and not for the other. But with that said, I definitely think that, you know, it's something that, if doing it as a larger scale project, would give us a better rate for the project. So if we're doing and I think we do have other window replacement initiatives in the district, I would be inclined to just remove that one item for that one reason, knowing that we as a district were looking to do larger scale window replacement projects, and adding those in will get economies. So I was going to defer to Matt to get, it's not a legally binding answer, because I didn't ask you to prepare this answer, but, you know, obviously I hate to use the private sector, lay people, home buyers, but you can, when you buy one window, you pay one thing. When you buy a house of windows, you pay another. So that would, I assume, still be the same in this type of environment?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I'm sorry?
That was too many clauses in one sentence for me.
I can,
Is
I
Okay.
can simplify.
So
I can-
basically, if we put off number 4, it says that we're going to do the windows, but we'll do the windows when we do a bunch of other windows, so we'll save because we're going to buy a bunch of windows. The toilet paper analogy, 1 roll or 50 rolls, you're going to save a lot more money on 50.
And those two items are $154,000.
And I would be very open to dropping those out so we can actually do it on a more economical scale.
The only Would-
Go ahead. Is your mic on?
my
That's the
mic
first
is
question.
on.
Okay.
Yes. I just want to
Yep.
insert myself a little bit here. The office window replacement, while it is replacing the exterior windows, it is taking the existing home-style air conditioning units that are up in the transom of the offices, each assistant principal, and the office staff, and replacing them with like a split system unit. Because well, Tom taught me this new phrase, window shakers, and he's correct. Those kind that you stick into the window, that's what they have in the offices right now. $300, Home Depot, put it up there, hang a chain on the outside of it, attach it to the building so it doesn't fall down. That's what they're using for air conditioning in those offices. This would be the window replacement and to air condition the offices at both schools. And oh, I'm sorry, I broke my pen here. So it's replacing the windows, but it's also the HVAC in those areas. So
Yeah, I want to speak to it again as well. It is true that down the line, we're going to do, I hope, massive window replacement, and you'll see on the capital improvement plan that we have designated 2 years to really focus on the high school. These 5 office windows are kind of unique the way they are in these buildings that were built back in the 60s, and I think I'm more concerned about it now, especially this coming summer, if we could get it done, because we know if we're fortunate enough to get the upper elementary and Mastercola Elementary School taken care of it with the parking lots and the boilers, those 2 schools are going to be off limits as it happens for summer school, and all the summer school experiences are going to happen in the Ferry School. So it's a timing element as well. I just feel for the people that are in those 2 buildings, because they've put up with a lot over the years and they haven't complained. And Tom literally pulled this out and kept it separately from all the other window replacement. And we took it off when we were making the first cut list of $600,000+ because we needed to even come close to 2%. But now that you're looking at putting it back, I would be delinquent if I didn't chime in to Matt and say it's important.
Start from Brandy, and I think Cinda, and then Andy.
I don't know the front. I only know Laura Bobbitt sits in the front at Reed's, and I don't know who sits at Thornton's. But is that space included, or is it just the back?
It's the
Back
back, and in the
offices.
summer, that position is not filled, so we're talking about when you go into the building, it goes straight into the main office. There are 2 panels there, and then there's the principal's office, the assistant principal, and one step further is the nurse's office. And if you look up at the transom, it's just we don't look up and see what's there. But to Matt's point, the air conditioning unit is very old, very noisy, it just doesn't function very well, and it's been that way for a period of time. And I believe it was you when we were talking about it to say that you wanted to try and make sure that each building had equitable facilities when it came to year-round staff. And so I think with Tom's comment and your comment, we put that together. And if you said, well, why did it even appear on the cut list in the first place? It's because we had to make some tough decisions, and that's why it got put there.
So I initially said that I would like to keep items 1 through 4, and the following items after that total just under 30,000. I understand that 30,000, in Jacinda's point, the overall scheme of it is it that big of a deal? No, but it still is something, an area that we can postpone. I still stand in saying that I'd really like to move forward with the office window replacement, just mainly because I have daily interaction at one of those buildings, and I'm aware of how it is during the summertime. And I do feel that it's not just our staff that experience that, it is our students. So I still stand firm in 1 through 4.
Thanks, Brandy. Cinda?
I also agree that I'd like to keep the office window replacements and 1 through 7. Again, because I can see this being a cut list that's going to go on and on and on. And with us deferring such a large dollar amount of the $755,000, I'd like to get some of these little picky things taken care of this year so they don't continue to defer, because there will certainly be other things that will need maintenance of similar ilk that will come up, some that we know about already and some that we don't. And so I'd rather take care of the ones that we can and still have a significant decrease and still coming less than our default budget.
Okay. Andy?
Just a clarifying point. Marge, you said that with the work that's being done if the warrant article passes for the paving, there'll be a lot of activity at Mascola Complex, which will put more pressure on the other 2 buildings.
The 2 ferry schools would then be the ones that will be used for summer school.
But wouldn't doing major work to redo the office windows and heating and ventilation also impact those schools while it's going on?
Not to the extent of 2 boilers and the parking.
Well,
lots.
but I mean, but if you do it all at the same time, you're affecting all 3 schools at the same time.
It's just lesser. It's just, I think we could get that done, could we not? It's much easier. If you look at all the projects, I'm just saying we're already talking about where we're putting summer school, and we just realized that the Master Cola Complex is just going to be off limits because of what's going on there. So it's the lesser of projects, and we think we can turn that around faster, I guess is a better way of putting it.
Okay. Naomi?
To nitpick / clarify on that one, so would the idea be that it might be possible to finish the windows prior to the summer school issue at those schools?
I just don't think that the summer school comings and goings would be affected. Those offices are you're already in the building, and there would be just work on the exterior and then on the roof. So that's pretty much what we're talking about. I don't see a big impact. If it was not even if it was the upper elementary school, I'm just trying to think of the offices there. Just they're on the exterior of the building, so they're easy to get to. I don't see a big impact as far as summer school playing out there or not with the windows.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I'm also in support of 1 through both 4s, so to speak. I could take it or leave it on the remaining 5 to 8, but I don't see any reason to postpone that expense when we don't have a place necessarily to put it later, and we have that much of a buffer at the moment.
Cinda?
I'd like to make a motion.
The floor is yours.
All
You
right.
asked for it, you got it.
I'd like to make a motion that we add items 1 through 7 back into our operating budget in that total $244,000.
That'd be-
244.
That'd be 1 through 8, we'll get 244,075.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, so is there a second? I will second. I lean toward that when I look at what we can get for, it is $28,000, the difference between what Brandy was going to propose and what you have moved to the floor. I think that, especially the crack fill, I think that's something that will get a lot of preventative. When I look at the aluminum tables, they will get a lot of use. Those are some of our most heavily used facilities in the district. And wood post replacement, I really don't know enough about wood post, but if it's number 5, it means it's pretty important compared to number 8. So, but with that, I think that they're there and ranked for a reason. So, but I could definitely see value in everything that was presented here. And again, when we talk about maintenance, we talk about preventative, and I definitely see the wood post replacement and the crack fill as filling those initiatives. So I would be in support of that. But that's kind of where my head's at. So, Cinda?
I also wanted to reiterate that I would be comfortable pushing many of these items back if we weren't already pushing back the significant and expensive roofing. So really, a lot of these I would be prone to say okay and not vote for. But because of the fact that we're pushing back such high ticket items, I would like to get these done.
Andy?
No. I have no comment.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say
Oh, that
something
was
and
your
decide not to.
comment.
No.
I said, well, I haven't called the
No.
question yet, Andy,
No.
but you have your time.
I was going to make a comment, but I don't want to make it, so.
Okay. Well, it was really funny anyway, if it makes you feel better. So. Are there any other comments to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? 1. The motion carries 410. So, Matt? Yeah, so Matt, you have the math up to date for
I think so.
future and fund?
I was
future-
adding other numbers because there's a typo in your warrant article thing over here as far as what we're doing for Article 7, so I wanted to,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, that was, so the 755,805, which is option 1, was cut, and the 244,075 was added back in.
Yes, so I'm going to ask you a solid.
Okay.
What's the number?
For the operating,
Yes, please.
new operating budget? Well, after the last meeting, you reduced the operating budget by, or the meeting before, 33,053. So that went to 76,165,766. And then when you add the 755,805 back in, it looks like you're at 77,654,036.
Why'd you add it?
Added the 244,075 in?
Oh, you
That
said
was an add.
755, I thought. You said 755.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yeah, 244,075.
Plus
was added back in.
244,075,
Mm-hmm.
which gets us to
77,654,036. 77,654,036. Yeah. Yeah. I've got that number.
that's
This should be
031 at least.
165, 766.
No.
So you start off with the 78, 165, 766.
Why is that this?
That's wrong. That should be an 8, not a 6.
Okay.
Oh, so you're saying the draft warrant.
Yes, instead of a 6, it should be an 8. Yeah. It was just a typo on one of the numbers. So 78, 165, 766
Okay.
minus 755, 805 plus 244075 equals 77,654,036.
I'm with you now.
How much below?
And that, let's subtract 77, oops, 77,654,036 minus, the default is 77,787, 568 equals, looks like 133, 532 below default.
Okay. So with that, we still have to finalize the budget, and then we can finalize the warrant article.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I will entertain a motion to put forth an operating budget for 2019-2020 of $77,654,036, which is $133,532 below default. Would anyone like to make that motion? Andy? Is there a second? Seconded by Naomi. Any comments or questions? I think we've done this very publicly and vetted it with every opportunity to show the work we've put in, so I'm very proud of what we've done this year, and I thank you for all your hard work, administration and board. So with that, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 5-0-0. And we have an operating budget for now. Until it goes to the budget committee, and then we'll see where that goes. So on to item number 5, which is the board's response to draft warrant article number 7 on the 2019 warrant. So Matt, I'm going to let you lead with, based on the math we just did.
Article 7 is the operating budget. Shall the district raise and appropriate in its operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session, that's the deliberative session, for the purposes set forth therein totaling $77,654,036. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $78,568, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of district or by law or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10, and 15, 16, to take up issue of a revised operating budget only. So this has to be voted on by the board and budget committee when the time comes.
Excellent. So I will entertain a motion to accept Article 7 as written, made by Naomi, seconded by Cinda. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, we'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 5-0-0. And the warrant is done. And thank you again. So we are on to item number 6, which is the second quarter curriculum review, and I will turn the microphone over to Mark.
Thank you. So I appreciate the opportunity to share with the board and the community the work of our district at the second quarter curriculum review. And I'll just take the opportunity again to just remind the board and remind the community that what we've really tried to do in all of our curriculum and instruction work in the district in the last number of years is to really have a mindful sense of the importance of student understanding. So I've talked to the board about this, you know, a lot of times, but it just bears repeating, that there's a difference between a student knowing something and a student being able to understand it. So the best example of that, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes, is it might be true that we know we should exercise, but we might not understand what physiological effects exercise has on our long-term health. So unless we understand that, we might be less inclined to do it. But once we understand it, then the likelihood might be that we'd increase our activity. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to share with our students and our teachers more and more and more. So all of the curriculum work that we've been about is having that added dimension of trying to figure out what is the larger purpose of what we're trying to teach. So having said that, and also I would just add that in the last 10 years, the state of New Hampshire has had 3 completely different state assessments. And so in each of those iterations, whether it's NECAP, Smarter Balance, or now the current iteration SAS, each one of those, though very different in character, has had a consistent focus on application and understanding. That is the one thing that has remained true about all of them. So it stands to reason that our curriculum and instruction efforts match that goal. So having said that, that's the context. So in world language, that team is currently working on the answer to its main question, which is, what is the goal of world language learning in the Merrimack School District? So an answer could be that we learn to conjugate our verbs, and we learn perfect grammar, and that's a viable thing, and that's what's happened for a long time. What this group is focusing on more is the purpose of world language instruction and learning in Merrimack School District is understanding how to communicate. So as Angela Maslanka said, after 4 years of high school world language, even the most fluent student is going to be at a very basic level, but we prepare the groundwork for future study and communication. But the focus is on communication, being able to get to the bathroom if you find yourself in a foreign country, being able to understand the cultural implications of certain actions so that you, stay safe, and so that you stay consistent with the cultural expectations. But most importantly, the communication. They're currently right now developing essential questions and enduring understandings around the purposes of world language learning. So they're really working as a team, 5 through 12. First time that's happened in Merrimack. They're working very hard on trying to communicate what would be the major purposes of each unit of study that they engage in, whether it's in French, Spanish, Mandarin, Latin, Arabic, and that takes time and dialogue. And then they're continuing to develop a curriculum-driven scope and sequence for grades 5 through 12. We haven't had that before. We've had a scope and sequence really grades 9 through 12. The middle school has kind of done some high school prep, but it hasn't been integrated fully into the high school program, and the 5-6 program has been purely exploratory. This is the first time that we're really working hard to develop a 5 through 12 scope and sequence for that number of years, 7 years of world language instruction for those who choose to do it. And for those who choose to enter at points past let's say fifth grade, let's say maybe you're in 5th and 6th grade exploratory, and then for a variety of reasons you don't take world language in the middle school, although we would encourage it, but let's just say there are reasons that you don't. And then you jump back in 9th grade. We're working hard on figuring out those entrance ramps. We're calling them entrance ramps. How do you provide a meaningful scope and sequence to students when their entrance ramps might be a little bit different. So those are not self-evident questions. They have to be worked through, and so we're really working on that right now. So that's the work of the World Language Group. The phys ed group is right now closest to your being presented to the board probably in the late spring. So right now they're really working on finishing touches on all units. They're working on final updates to materials and equipment needs that might be presented to the board at the next budget season off of the curriculum that's being developed right now. So they're working on conducting really good inventories. They always have good inventories, but matching their current inventories to the revised curriculum and seeing where needs might be. They're also very importantly working on finishing touches on their glossary of terms because there's a lot of language right now that's being introduced in the curriculum. We want to make sure that teachers are understanding that language commonly, and that parents will be given that common glossary of terms as well, so that students and parents can have a common language when they're talking about what happened in phys ed today. One of the big components of the new curriculum is a fitness tracking unit, and it's going to be, I think, very, very useful for students in the context of lifelong health and wellness. And it involves written directions, like most things, you know, programming the VCR a long time ago, so it stops flashing 12. It seems kind of hard at first, and then once you do it, you do it. But they're working hard right now in developing those written directions so that students on their own and parents on their own, if they choose, outside of school to continue to engage in that, can do that. And then we're working hard on the finalizing components of our adaptive PE. So students with some special needs, particularly around movement, have every right to be involved in physical education, and they need to have a meaningful program, and that requires some real careful thinking about how to take the standards-based curriculum that we're developing and modify it so that the goals of the curriculum are achieved while we modify so that they can actually participate and contribute. And that, I was going to say that's not as easy as it sounds. I don't actually think that sounds that easy. It certainly in practice has not been that easy, but you know, it's a very important thing, and so we're continuing to do that. But I really want to give that group tremendous credit for all the work that they have done, and you'll see them for yourselves later on this year. And again, I would just point out that this is a K-12 group. So teachers who, phys ed teachers who are for the first time now teaching PE to kindergartners, and teachers who are teaching high school PE are all working together and have for the last many years. And that, you know, is a pattern that we've developed for a long time now with all of our curriculum. And what that means is that when a student moves through grade to grade and school to school, they're encountering teachers who, A, know each other, and B, know what the scope and sequence of the curriculum has been, such that they can build off of it rather than kind of guess, well, I guess you guys are working on that down there. That's just not the way it is anymore. Social studies has just begun its curriculum revision work. Right now, they're really on just a get-to-know-you basis because, again, it's not always that high school social studies teachers and middle school social studies teachers meet with elementary folks who work on social studies. And so there's just that's that kind of process. We've been through it a lot of times. It's kind of interesting to see each new working group get to know each other. And so you know, for those of us like myself who sit on a lot of these meetings, it's kind of a pattern I've seen before. So let's get to know who's who at the table, and what are your interests, and what do you really value. What do you value in social studies education? What they're doing right now is really asking the question, what is the purpose of social studies learning? What is the point? beyond just memorizing dates and facts and figures. What is the point? What is the connection? And a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about that. And so it takes time to work through those very valid differences of, not even differences of, not disagreements, just I think this, you think that, and working through, well, so what does that mean for our delivery? So they're working on that. Part and parcel of that is to do an assessment of our current curriculum, specifically around world history and U.S. history. That's the one, and I've said this many times, that's the one curriculum that I'd say is, it's relatively speaking as good now as it was 10 years ago. In other words, 10 years ago when it was first developed, or 12 years ago when it was first developed, it was a really good, solid curriculum. The world has changed, and that the curriculum needs to reflect the change in 12 years. But that was the first curriculum that really focused on those big ideas and big questions. And so in substance, this is probably going to be less of a heavy lift for curriculum revision than the math curriculum was or the science curriculum was. And I say that to honor the people who worked on it 12 plus years ago before I was even here, because they did really good work back then. That's Marcia McGill, John Fabrizio. So I'm sharing with you that certainly things will change, but there's a very strong core that I think will make this less difficult work than others have been. At the K-8 level, right now, we're very, very happy that we have a full-time language arts coordinator at the middle school, and she is really fully integrated now with the elementary language arts coordinators, and the work they're doing has been outstanding. And what they're really working on now is this. You recall about 10 years ago we had the Collaborative Assessment Project, or CAP project, which was an entire revamp in the way that we delivered elementary literacy instruction. Since that time, we have added additional components to that. So that would have been the time that we really focused on guided reading and leveled books that matched a student's developmental level. But since that time, we've added Making Meaning, which is a phonics program. Words Their Way, which is a spelling program. Lucy Calkins, which is a writing program. While at the same time maintaining our focus on conferring, which is a teacher and a student working together to talk about the meaning of a text so that they can demonstrate that they understand what they've read and not just reading words on a page. And then progress monitoring, that long-standing effort to make sure that students and teachers know and parents know where a student is at a given point in time, such that they can take that information and determine whether or not you're on track to be at grade level, or whether you're a little bit lagging, or whether you're exceeding expectations, in which case try to figure out, well, where can we get you to be? So all of those things are parts that need to be put into a more cohesive whole now, and so the work of the K-8 teams is on synthesis and integration, and that work is ongoing. Relative to math, we're continuing to implement the revised curriculum and the new programs. We now have new programs that support our curriculum at the elementary, middle, and high school. The focus on professional development, in addition to just getting increasing familiarity with the programs themselves, is again on the underlying principles of mathematics, so that it's one thing to have automaticity. 7 times 7 is 49, 9 times 9 is 81, and that's very important for math fluency down the road and for more complex problems. But it is also important that students understand the mathematic principles underlying those fact-based exercises that they're asked to do. And so a lot of the professional development that we're continuing to provide at the district and more importantly at the site level revolves around that. On top of all that, we continue to infuse our work with RTI, which is response to intervention, or now response to instruction, which is not a program so much as a process approach to instruction. So really what that means is that whereas it used to be the case in our business, whether it's Merrimack or wherever, that you had a core group of students, and then the teacher taught that core group, and if there was a student with a special need, then that student would go off to the special educator. Or if there was a student who needed to be excelled, they would go to a gifted and talented program. Response to intervention or response to instruction requires that the classroom teacher take the lion's share of ownership on delivering that good quality instruction, so that it reduces, hopefully, the number of special ed referrals that we would have and see. And what it really means is that the classroom teacher gets more and more and more expert at differentiating instruction, so that they're not just delivering to one core group of students, and students on either end kind of are left to their own or else get farmed out to other helpers, but instead that the teacher is required to really try to use the data that they have in front of them through a variety of assessments to figure out where an individual student is, and to the extent that they can in a classroom that's, you know, got a good number of students in them, how to support them. So overarching all of that is continued work on RTI. And so I will be happy to take any questions that you have, but in general, that is the status as of right now with our curriculum initiatives.
Are there any questions or comments on the curriculum for the quarter? Seeing none, I'll just make the comment that these quarterly updates have been so valuable in the last few years, and I think it really is not just for the board, who definitely knows you work very hard throughout the year, but you know, really where your focus is and how it does align with you know, what we're trying to get for student outcomes, but as well the public. So know that really it's not the reading, writing, arithmetic of the one-room schoolhouse, and how sophisticated putting together a valuable education really is. So these are wonderful updates. We appreciate them. We keep up the good work, and we thank you for that. So we are on to housekeeping. So the slippery slope of the evening, which is the item number 7, the approval of January 7th and January 8th, 2019 minutes. I'm going to take them separately because we had different membership available different nights. So I will entertain a motion to accept January 7th, 2019 minutes. Made by Andy, seconded by Brandy. Are there any edits to the January 7th minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Abstain? The motion carries 401 with Naomi abstaining. Excuse me. On to January 8th, 2019 minutes. I will entertain a motion to accept, made by Cinda, seconded by me. Might as well do it. So are there any edits to the minutes of the 8th? Andy?
So I'm looking at this. At the very top, it talks about present. Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Schneider, board members Guyumi, Thompson, and Schoenfeld.
Good catch.
It just stuck out there, that's all.
So present would be Schneider and Guglielmi and Barnes. Present. Thanks. Wow, I blew it today. Present were Schneider, Guglielmi, and Barnes, and Schoenfeld and Nunez were excused. So thank you for that. Are there any other edits? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Abstain. The motion carries 302 with Brandy and Naomi abstaining. On to item number 8, which is the acceptance of gifts and grants under $5,000 with Matt.
Thank you very much. Tonight, to James Mastercola Elementary School from Claire Graham in Merrimack, New Hampshire, the amount of $200. And this is basically for the funds are donated for the purpose of helping single-parent families struggling to pay for lunch account balances due to divorce or death of a parent. So this will be allocated by administration. It'll be applied towards the student in needs lunch accounts. So that is from Mrs. Graham. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I'll entertain a motion. Cinda?
A very, very thoughtful gift. I'd like to make a motion to accept with our extreme gratitude the gift of $200 from Ms. Graham to, or Claire Graham to James Master Cole Elementary School.
Is there a second? Seconded by Andy. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, none. The motion carries 5-0-0. Item number 9, correspondence. Is there any correspondence to come before the board? Cinda?
I had a parent reach out to me regarding her concern for the cost of the high school lunches. So I'm in the process of working through that and responding back to her.
Thank you. Are there any other items of correspondence? Seeing none, are there any comments from the board? Seeing none, item number 10, new business. Is there any new business to come before the board? Seeing none, item number 11, committee reports. Are there any committee reports from the board? Andy?
Just really quick, last Monday, which would have been not the 14th, I was counting backwards. I was at the Ceres Board of Directors meeting again. It's not a committee necessarily, but something that we're going to report on in the near term. And we just did an update of where we are in terms of business and the programs, and looking at ways that we can, that Ceres can really stabilize. I mean, the good news is Ceres is stabilizing fairly well in terms of the programs that they're delivering, and we're, as a board of directors, looking to see how over time we can take that stability and then expand it while sticking to the roots of what Ceres is good at doing. So,
Thank you. Are there any other committee reports? Seeing none, item number 12 is public comments on agenda items. We have no public, so I will go on to item number 13. We will take a moment to sign the manifest, and I will entertain a motion to go to non-public session per RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, Section C. Made by Cinda, seconded by Brandy. Brandy, how do you vote?
In favor.
Naomi?
In favor?
Cinda?
In favor.
Andy?
in favor?
And I vote in favor. The motion carries 5-0-0. Thank you and good night.